What's up, buddy?
What's up?
Welcome in to episode 6. Exciting stuff. So this last week, I do this every spring. I really love mountain biking, and the trails get shut down when the snow is melting and everything gets all muddy crap, and you can't ride for a long time. So every spring, I'm like, ooh, trails are starting to look nice in southern Indiana or eastern Indiana. I'm going to block off a day and just go ride my mountain bike. And then every year, without fail, I get too busy, and I'm like, oh, I can't take off 5 hours today. I have this, and this. Well, this Friday, I actually got to do it.
Nice.
I actually got drawings.
So you drove down south?
Well, I went to Winona Lake.
Okay.
They have a trail there that, gets opened up really easily. And so, went out to Winona Lake, rode for the afternoon or morning, whatever, and then had lunch by myself in this cute little shop there. It was really nice. It was really, really cool. And also, I was like, I can't waste a day. I got back to the office around like 2 or 3, and I was like, well, I can't be on this podcast and talk about the stuff I should be doing and then go mountain biking and not do that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So Friday afternoon, I actually put together 2 forms that we talked about here. One was a process document, just something to send the clients day one when they sign.
Like a contract?
No, not a contract. Just these are the steps we're going to go through. Not a formal document, more just like an extra flyer or something. But this is step 1 through, I think I had 5 or 6 steps on there, explaining a little bit more in depth all the stuff that I'm saying to clients on a weekly basis, like just so they have something to fall back on when they're confused about where we're at in the process. So I wrote that up, working on just getting my, and on my letterhead and stuff. And then I also worked out a tiered proposal. We talked about with pricing and charging it looks a lot like if you're to sign up for like a website app or something like Dropbox, and there's the free tier and the standard tier and the premium tier. And then it's got the list and the check boxes of all the stuff each tier includes. And so I did that. I have 4 tiers. I think I need to...
So are you offering things that you didn't offer before?
Actually, no. I'm just realizing, I'm like, let's take a minute and write down everything you do for a client. Any client you've ever done something for, write down as much stuff as you can think of. Then I'm like, okay, well, I don't really want to do that ever. There's some stuff I don't really ever want to do again. And so I crossed some items off, but most of the stuff was like, oh, I'm already providing this. I'm just not saying I'm providing it. So let's put it in a tier and sell it as a feature.
How would you handle that before? Would they ask or would you just bring up, oh, and by the way, I do this thing. That's an extra thing, and then do you charge them more for that service? Yeah.
So there's a couple things I just gave away for free, and I'm like, I don't have to, like a site plan. Because typically everybody gets a survey. So they don't really need me to do a site plan, but sometimes it's really helpful to do a preliminary site plan to see how it fits and where the driveway is going to go and all that. Well, times I would just like do it for free for people. Like this is an extra service I'm providing. I can put that in one of the higher end tiers.
Yeah.
And then there's stuff like I do a 3D interior walkthrough for people, but I had that as an option on my basic proposal, just like an add-on you could do to the base contract. But I think more people will choose it if it's part of a package.
Right.
And so
it's just like upselling in the restaurants.
Yeah.
Like if we don't say hey, do you want to add this ingredient to your omelet or add an extra, whatever, or get a splash of syrup in your iced tea, that costs another $1 or whatever.
Yeah. Right.
Like if it's presented to them in a good way, maybe they'll take advantage of it.
Yeah. So that's my hope. I put that in the deluxe tier, whatever. I don't know what I'm going to call them yet. But yeah, so I'm really excited about it. I have a couple things here that I could show of like, hey, this podcast is actually doing something.
Yeah.
It's moving my business forward. So that's exciting.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Yeah, I guess with us, like, I was debating if I was going to bring this up because it's we're recording a couple weeks prior to when we post it. So but we're doing a bracket challenge at Burger House, and that was just kind of like an idea when we talk about how do we get more customer engagement and create more sustainability within the business, where we're creating regulars, bringing them back more often, just coming up with ideas that excite us and excite the customer. So we're doing just a bracket challenge for the NCAA tournament, and we'll see how it goes. I mean, I posted a video on the Burger House page. It's just fun. It's just something fun to do. It's fun for the staff too, and gets them excited. And hopefully we have people not only come in the first 3 days of this week to fill one out, but also, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, on Thursday and Friday, take off work and spend the day there.
Yeah, right.
People that like doing that. So we'll see what happens. But I would agree that, doing this and just talking with someone, it's almost like having, your own coach in a sense, where it's like, you're just bouncing off ideas off each other and trying to do things that make us better business owners. So hopefully it's helpful to whoever's listening, but it's also helpful for us.
Yeah, I think this is maybe a good segue into our topic today, because I didn't realize I kind of miss hanging out with people. When you're a business owner, especially someone like me, like I don't have any employees, and you don't have any employees on your level either. So I imagine like it feels kind of isolating to run a business.
Yeah.
It feels like there's not a ton of people you can talk to about this stuff. I'm not going to talk with my clients about it. So I've really learned to seek out a lot of relationships like this, because you will need so many people to just bounce ideas off of. And it really helps to have another business owner here that is impartial and knows me and knows my business somewhat. And so, yeah, the topic this week is what we wish we knew before we were starting. And I think that's right off the bat, a big one is like seek out, it's going to feel more isolating than you realize.
Yeah.
Seek out a ton of people to just get in your operations. And
yeah, I think a good intro to this, I mean, we've talked about it on previous episodes, but a good intro to this episode would be like just a brief summary of like why we got into this in the first place. Because someone watching might be like having some of their own, and their own thoughts on why they're interested in small business and entrepreneurship. And I think it might be helpful to for us to just like really briefly lay that out from our own individual perspective. So for us, it was, right after the 2007, 2008 recession, and I had just graduated college. It was kind of tough to find a job. I was in San Diego, and then that was before I moved back right after school, and kind of decided like it's really hard to find a job out there. And my dad has a lot of connections, and just thought it would be easier to get into the workforce being back here. And then after a summer of just working for him, we came up with the idea of doing a restaurant here in this space, which is now Lenny's. It was Le Peep, which is now across the street. So I wasn't an owner at that time. My dad had a partner. I was like the manager, and that's kind of how I started for the first few years, and then was able to have the opportunity to buy out his partners in this project, and we got open for pretty cheap, considering. So it was more of just like, for me, it was a situation where I didn't really have too many options, and I was willing to do whatever, and that meant like going into Evanston and training for 3 months. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in this episode, because it's kind of relevant to what I wish I would have known going into the industry at that time. But yeah, trained there, and then got open in December, and just never looked. For me, it was like I really didn't have many options. I knew our family had a history with small business, and we would just do whatever it took to figure it out.
Yeah. Is this something was it like, oh, cool, I'll do that? Or was this business ownership something you wanted to do?
I mean, it sounded exciting, but I was definitely like, think about it, just graduating college. I mean, I wasn't an owner. I wasn't being presented that opportunity at that time. I kind of thought like, maybe if this goes well, I'll have an opportunity to buy in.
Yeah.
But I didn't really know what to think other than like, whoa, that sounds like a big deal. Like people my age don't really like get to manage a restaurant and maybe have some more opportunities in the future because of that. So
Yeah.
it sounded a little intimidating, but it was also like it also felt pretty cool, to be able to have that opportunity that a lot of people don't have. So I didn't really know what to think. I just knew it was going to be a really cool opportunity. It was going to be a lot of work, and both of those proved to be true.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, for me, it's kind of a confluence of things. I mentioned last week just the job in Minnesota didn't pan out exactly as I thought, and they switched me to sales. So I did sales for 3 months, and I enjoyed sales and the sales process. I think that's something I would like doing if my business ever, God forbid, ever fails or something like that. But I couldn't stand the weekend thing. I'm like, I can't be working every Saturday and Sunday for the rest of my life. Like, it's so weird. Our days off, I think Wednesday and Thursday or something like that. Tuesday, Wednesday. It's just so weird. You feel like you're in a different world than everybody else in your family. Like, no one else has a Tuesday and a Wednesday off, so you're just kind of wasting 2 days. And then on the weekends, you're exhausted because that's you're talking to people all day long. Like, I gotta figure something out. And at that same time, there are other builders that I worked with before. They're like, hey, we're swamped. Like, it's going crazy. Do you have any extra capacity to do a drawing on the side or something? I'm like, no, not yet. But enough talk to me where I'm like, okay, maybe there is something here. And I've always felt like my gifting was more small business ownership, like jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah.
It kind of fits a little bit better with a small business owner than it does with a manager or a salesperson or something like that. So I've always been drawn to starting something. Was really, really nervous, but excited.
And it's unique for you because you don't have any employees. So like you have a lot of the skill sets to be an entrepreneur and have a small business. But what you were talking about in the last episode about like not being good at managing people, it kind of like that's a bit of a stronghold if you get to the point where it's like you want to grow and
right.
And there's more demand, but you just don't have the capacity. And it's like, well, do I, hire more employees? And with that comes risk, knowing the history that you had in Minnesota.
Yeah, right. I've thought about that ad nauseum. So
Yeah.
I don't know. My current thought is I think I'd probably want to bring on a like COO type person and almost have like a 5149 partner in it and say like, I'll be the creative brainstormer guy and do all the social media and marketing and stuff and sales, and you just run the thing. Hire the people, get the drawings out, like do the operations side. So I think that would be better than managing a big team, but I don't know. I'm not there yet either.
Yeah. So I guess just keeping it really broad to start out, like what are some things that you wish you would have known?
Yeah. I have a list here. I think the biggest thing that took me a long time to adjust was kind of the combination of price objections are a good thing and or it's okay to lose a client in a sales process. So when I started off, I didn't really know what to price my service at, and all I really had to base it off of was like, okay, what can you buy a floor plan online for? I'll charge slightly more than that. Well, I've realized over time, my value is actually way more than that. Designing a custom home is a lot different than buying a floor plan online, and there's a lot that goes into that service. And it took me a long time to realize, everybody's saying yes to my pricing is a bad thing,
Yeah. Well, and you're kind of just a nice guy, so it's like, you want to provide your service to a lot of people and have good have them to make sure they have good experiences.
Yeah.
What?
But it took me years. I would say 3 or 4 years to be comfortable enough in my skin, and this has happened when somebody says, "Oh, you're a little bit higher than the other people I've talked to." I'm like, good. You know, I want to be, and here's why. And here's why I think I'm different than the other people you might be talking to. And if you don't think so, go with them. Like, if you don't feel like my value's here, I don't want you to use me. You know, I say it in a nicer way, but I've finally got to the point where I'm comfortable in having that conversation with a potential client. Like, it's okay. It's okay if you think I'm high. I'm for some people and not everybody, and that's fine. If you think,
well, it at least validates too that like, all right, my pricing is getting more in line than what it was before.
yes, yeah. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that has mattered to the bottom line of my business that I've learned I didn't know before starting. Mm-hmm. What's something for you?
I think just understanding what comes along with this industry, like the chaos of breakfast and lunch, you know, especially compared to some of the other concepts we do. Like breakfast and lunch is chaotic, and it can be, usually is. And that was the first restaurant that we opened. You know, we didn't start with. So when we opened Burger House 2 years later, you're like, this is easy, you know?
Yeah.
Like you just have to get your food out so fast. You have to do a ton of volume to make money because you're not charging as much for eggs and stuff. So there's just something about that concept that is just chaotic. And man, I remember one time, like this was like a month or two in, probably pretty early on. And I was working 7 days, and we weren't open at night because it's breakfast and lunch, but it still was like a lot of hours. And just like, I was so new to this that I was still trying to like wrap my mind around just what I was doing, you know, like you said, you didn't want to work weekends. It's like, I had I was working 7 days and I do have to do that, you know, depending on where we're at in our businesses. Like I've said in previous episodes, I might just have to drop everything and be gone for, you know, a couple months and just be working all the time. So it was, we were going into a Saturday or Sunday shift, and one of my prep cooks made this gooey butter, which is like the cinnamon sugar butter that we put on these English muffins, then we toast them in the salamander, which is like an open oven on the wall. And it was like breaking, like it was separating the butter. It wasn't prepared right. And I was so mad. My mom was like right behind me, and I was like, you know, cussing like crazy, and I grabbed the thing and threw it against the wall, and the whole kitchen just went like quiet. It was like one of those like, that was an overreaction.
Yeah.
It pops into my head every once in a while when I see like a kitchen manager or somebody like freak out. You know, you're like, oh man, I had one of those. But yeah, so you have moments like that where it's just super stressful and overwhelming, and if you don't know what you're getting into, like I kind of wish Le Peep made me train more, but it's like at some point they're not going to just keep providing you this service of like, and they want you to get your restaurant open so they can make money on their franchise fee.
Yeah, right.
You know, so 3 months was what I got, and I had to learn every single position during that time. Like I had to bus, serve, host, cook, you know, everything. So I just kind of, I feel like in hindsight, there should be more time, but I just don't know how it makes sense in that franchising world. And when you're franchising, you're typically dealing with someone that wants to own a restaurant that doesn't have the experience. Otherwise, they would just open up their own concept if they were really competent, you know? Yeah. And knew what they were doing and had a history in the industry. So it's just kind of, so that made it challenging, not having a ton of training. It's probably something I would like warn people about getting into it, because this industry it can be a beast. And if you're like a lawyer and you want to open a restaurant on the side, I would say like, you know, do not do that for sure.
Yeah. 'Cause it's really, I mean, it's really hands-on, right? Like,
yeah. And that's kind of what's made us successful, is the fact that like, I mean, I'm pretty good at reading people and knowing like, okay, that person's upset about something. Mm-hmm. And the tendency might be to like shy away from having a conversation because it might feel uncomfortable, and conflict can be like very uncomfortable. So you're opening a door to a conversation that like maybe you don't want to deal with, but like you should, you know? So, so there's a lot of that where I'm pulling people aside and talking to my managers regularly. And if I have regular meetings scheduled with the managers, like that's what we've been doing lately is every Thursday we meet for like 2 hours, all the managers together. And then I try to like set aside time individually with each manager. And the more that I do that, I feel that the better things go in the restaurants.
Yeah.
Like less issues because they feel supported, you know?
Yeah.
So I wish I would have done that sooner. Like started those meetings, which takes more energy on my part, but it saves a lot of like stress and headache in the future if I invest my time into that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because I think we've all seen what happens when you don't do that, when there's a disgruntled employee and it doesn't get addressed. You'll be at a place and you're like, this person, they're front of house. Mm-hmm. They're supposed to be greeting me, but they're grumpy. You can tell they hate their job. They don't want to get us a menu. This is a horrible experience. Why doesn't someone at this business talk to this person about this thing?
Yeah.
I think that's good that you're meeting.
Well, and it's hard to always like do that with everybody because it's we got 160 employees right now. Yeah. So it's not like I'm doing that with every single host or whatever, but like Cherville, it's hard for me to get out there just because it's, almost an hour away. So I don't really but I talk to Bob on the phone and check in with him. And then my office is at Burger House. So I'm talking to Chris, the manager there, like every single day, checking in with him. Yeah. So it does, but you recognize who are the employees that are key employees, but need a little bit more support and hand holding, either because they're newer to the industry or newer to this position. Yeah. Or whatever, and like after working with people, like who needs to be most invested into. Yeah. But it's important to do that. So, yeah, I really wish I would have known that. That's kind of probably the main thing for me. Yeah.
Another thing I learned too late. So when I started, I love the marketing side of it. So it was really easy for me to create a logo and a website and get portfolio pictures together. Like that was all really exciting. And that part of my business went up super fast. But then I'm not a good writer and don't really spend a lot of time writing stuff. So I was really slow to get good. There's just a ton of forms you need to run a business. If you're going to be interacting and making sales with clients, you need a contract, a termination agreement, a subcontract agreement. If I'm going to hire another architect or drafter to draw plans for me, like there should be some sort of agreement we have as parties. And
you can have a lawyer that you work with help draw that stuff up, but that's just all extra cost too. So it's like goes back to like talking about, the more you can do on your own, the more, money you're going to make.
But like, I didn't have a termination agreement until a few years in, and I have a client that doesn't want to continue using me. It's like, oh, wait, what do I do? Yeah. So yeah, I think there was a ton of forms I needed. I should almost put together like we've talked about this a little bit, of like a startup packet. Of just like what you need to open your doors given a certain type of business. I don't know that we could speak to every type of business, but I feel like I could help a lot with service-based stuff. If you were to start a service-based business, what question would you have for me? Like what's the first thing you would ask me? What would you want to know?
If you wanted to get into my industry?
Either or. Yeah, I was thinking you get into mine, but yeah, either or.
Okay. Well, we can stick with that. I would say probably like how much of your industry is like institutional knowledge versus things you can kind of like figure out on the fly and like get trained. Like with the restaurant industry, can you learn the basics in 3 months and be good enough?
Oh yeah.
Like how quickly can you understand just like the function of what you do, which is designing homes?
Yeah.
So I would probably start with that because that's what I would hope someone would ask me. Like, I would want to gauge their experience level if they wanted to like franchise one of our restaurants.
Yeah.
Which again, I would have a very hard time doing because anyone wanting to franchise, again, lacks a lot of that institutional knowledge. And I'm going to be like, okay, so now they're going to open this thing in like Fort Wayne or South Bend. And like, is it just going to crash and burn and then ruin the reputation of this restaurant that I've created?
Yeah.
You know, so like I would kind of get that sorted out right away.
Yeah. What would you tell me, like, if I wanted to start Lenny's Laporte? Like, hey, I'm getting out of home design. I want to franchise a restaurant. I'm dead set on this.
Yeah.
Like, how do I learn it?
I would start with gauging that. Like, do you have any experience? But then I would just try to make sure you understand the amount of workload and potential workload that goes into running a restaurant. Because when things are good, I can spend time on other things and I don't have to be managing shifts in the restaurant. But anything can happen. Your managers could quit, and when you have 6 restaurants, that's 6 managers that like one of them might be upset or just burn out or whatever. And then if you don't really have a good idea, if you don't understand what's going on, and then all of a sudden they quit, and you're like, I thought he was happy. It doesn't matter. You're in there now. Like,
Okay.
So
Yeah.
there's a lawyer that I know really well. He's been in the industry for a long time, and he owns a small sandwich shop now, but which is really good. But he's had some fine dining places in the past, and he told me one time, like, it got to the point where they were calling me, and I was in my office, and he was doing this for fun. Like, he likes the restaurant industry. He's always calling me like, you should do this, you should do that. He's just passionate about it. So he had his place, and they were calling him like while he's meeting with clients, like, we've got this major problem, and it was like a super successful restaurant. He just closed because he's like, I'm done. Like, this is not why I got into this. So I think understanding what you're getting into, like this, and I don't really have experience in other industries, but like, from what I've seen or from what I know, like, this industry is a beast.
That's what I've heard. Anybody in the hospitality, sector, I've heard that, like, it's all hands on deck all the time. Well, I got exposure to it very early on. I remember Thanksgiving at our house back at the old Steiner compound. Maybe this is 2015. And you had just started.
2010.
2010.
I remember. No, it was
okay.
Christmas. It was Christmas 2010. The first, like, we'd just opened 2 weeks prior.
Yeah, and somebody quit or didn't show up or something, and you're like, bye, guys. I got to go. We're all like,
yeah.
What?
Well, it wouldn't have been on Christmas or Thanksgiving because we were closed those days. But I remember distinctly being at your house on Christmas, and like, I got a text from Eduardo.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not coming in anymore. Like, sorry.
Yeah, and you were just gone. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, well, that was a really stressful time. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah, you deal with stuff like that, and that's part of the benefit of growing to a certain extent. It's like, I don't really get those calls as much anymore, but there are times I have to cook, or I need to cook, and I'll do it, but we've grown enough to where, like, I'm not the manager, and it's like, I got to jump on the line real quick. Like, I do have people in place to kind of be more of a contingency plan.
Yeah.
So that helps a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Another thing I picked up on pretty quick, I'm usually pretty good at asking people questions and not being afraid to ask questions. But I think there's people out there wondering if they should start something. And the thing I learned is people are way more willing to help than you think. If you come up to somebody and say, hey, you're an expert in this, and I'd love to pick your brain for a second, what would you do here? Almost all the time, they will answer. And it's like good business, you stuff that you would think would be a really good business secret that you shouldn't, like, closed door information that you shouldn't be given. But I think there's something in, if you can come to that person humbly and have a genuine nature about, like, you want to grow, you want to get better at this. I think there's just a real willingness to share, and for people to help you out.
Yeah, I've experienced that too. If you come to them, not only humbly, but like providing some details in your own struggles.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, this person's being honest. Because sometimes you meet with people and you're like, they're just kind of beating around the bush, or they're not being transparent, which like they have no reason to be. Like they don't need to be transparent with you. They don't work for you. But I've found that too. Like when I come to someone and I kind of like almost share some sales numbers, like we're down, we only did X amount last week, and they're like, oh wow, he's like actually giving me numbers. You know, then it like creates this relationship where now they're willing to share with you, and it's the same sort of thing as this. Like now I've got this Greek guy who owns a restaurant in town. We'll do that. Like how's DoorDash doing for you this week? We'll kind of give each other numbers, and we've built that relationship because we're both being like pretty transparent with each other.
Yeah. There's even some, I, really love posting on social media, and that's my main form of marketing. And there are a ton of people that like other creators that you just message and, hey, that was a great post. I noticed you did this, and this. What do you think's working for you in that? Those kind of questions get answered way out more often than you think. Mm-hmm. And so there's a handful of creators that I've reached out to now and just established relationships that do similar things that I do and have way bigger followings than me. Like the kind of people you think wouldn't respond, but again, because it's a specific, genuine question, I think there's a real willingness to help out.
So if I ask the question, what is something you wish you would have known about getting into small business before you got in, that was coming from like a positive, positive component? Would that be your answer, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Just ask for help way more than you think you need to, or if the thought in your head is like, oh, this person probably doesn't want to help me, or oh, they probably don't care, or oh, they're probably too big of a deal to listen to my question, like still ask it. You might get shot down. Yeah. But you'll get a yes more often than you think. Mm-hmm. What about you? You got anything else that you wish you knew?
Yeah, I another big one is understanding that certain concepts, if they work really well in one location, it's not always plug and play in another location. Like I kind of thought
I would have thought the same thing.
Yeah.
Like Lenny's works here, it would work somewhere else.
Right. So starting out, when we opened Burger House, I was managing Le Peep and Burger House, and I would just kind of split up my time, and I'd have like supervisors when I wasn't at that location that would kind of be the quasi manager at that time. So they were both going pretty well, and then we got in the mindset of like let's expand Burger House. Let's go out to Cherville. Let's go out to Indy. Like we were just searching for a location, which I would never recommend growing. It works for some people, but like for me, I would never grow based on like the desire to find another location. Like I like it when things happen organically, and it just feels right, because the latter is forced. It feels forced. And when something's forced and you're trying to make it happen, it's usually not a great thing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I felt with the second Burger House. It was, we were going to go to Cherville, and then that location didn't work out. And maybe I should have taken that as a sign, like, hey, pump the brakes. Mm-hmm. Like you don't just focus on what you're doing. Be happy with what you've got.
Yeah.
And then we're like, oh man, that location didn't work out. Let's go to Indianapolis. And then we opened in Indianapolis, and then we found another location in Cherville, and we opened there, and then we opened in Carmel, and they all did okay, but different locations struggle with different things, like whether it be staffing or seasonality, or too much competition. Like they all have, and part of it's just, I think it just boils down to like, I have a pretty good understanding of this market, and I live here, and it just makes sense to like be focused on Valpo.
Yeah.
And I don't need at this point. It's easy to say at this point because we've already got a lot keeping us busy. If I had one location, maybe I'd be bored and like I got to find, we got to open another one.
Yeah.
But I think understanding that, like understanding certain concepts might not do well in other locations, and then growing from a sense of like it's happening organically. I wish I would have done more of that. We figured that out.
What does that look like? What does organic growth look like?
So here's an example. Like in San Diego, my like primary food group was burritos, California burritos.
Oh, like the food pyramid. It was the top thing. Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
So, like literally every other day you're having a burrito. Probably, they're just so good out there, and that's why we opened Brick Street Burrito. It's the tortillas, it's French fries in the burrito, it's the garlic, and the way the steak is marinated. So yeah, if you've never had an authentic San Diego style California burrito, go to San Diego or go to Valpo and go to Brick Street, because we copied it. Like there have been other restaurants. There's one in Louisville that tried to do a California burrito, but they didn't get the tortillas shipped in from San Diego, and the tortilla is a huge piece of it. You wouldn't think like just get a tortilla from their local tortilleria, and so I really wanted to do that. Like I'd been thinking about that ever since college, and we just kind of got thrown into breakfast and burgers, and it was always on my mind. And then I was just driving by this. It was Valpo Vienna, that hot dog stand across from City Hall.
Oh yeah,
where Brick Street is now.
Yeah.
I was just driving by like that would be perfect. Just like a little hole in the wall place. Like we wouldn't have to put a ton of money into it. You could run it with just a few employees, and then I came back to the restaurant, to Burger House, and I was talking to one of my servers about it, and he was like, "Oh, you should go talk to him. He's like pretty nice." And I actually heard he might be interested in getting out of it. Like,
oh, interesting.
So then he kind of pushed me to like, just go in there and talk to him. Which I don't know if I would have done if someone didn't say that.
Yeah.
So then I just walked in there and I was like, "Hey, how's it going? Or would you ever be interested in selling?" And he was like, so I was like, I just threw a number out, and he was like, "Yeah, okay."
So that's how BSB started?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Okay, yeah, that's a great example.
So that's kind of organic. This was a hybrid, Lenny's, because we moved out and we were like, I felt the pressure of we've got to find something to put in here because it's always better to be your own boss. So like from that standpoint, I didn't
instead
feel
of leasing this place.
Right.
That was the alternative? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
So I didn't feel like it was organic from that standpoint because it felt like we got to figure something out. But I also kind of thought, Dave Portnoy is like really popular with the pizza reviews and coal-fired pizza and all that. Like maybe we should just do that. And I'd been interested in that type of pizza for a while, and I'd flown out with my dad to New Haven to try Sally's and Frank Pepe's and some of those that are like staples. So that was more of a hybrid, but I still felt like this one was a little forced.
Interesting. Because you built the building for Le Peep, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Across the street. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, so hopefully that provides a little context of like what it means to grow organically. I mean, that's a pretty strong example, and you're usually not going to have experiences like that. But
well, I mean, I would argue, I'm guessing from the outside looking in, I'm guessing the process was pretty similar for Birdie's.
Yeah, kind of.
I mean, there was an established restaurant that owner, but he was retiring, right? Went out, nobody wanted.
He had been talking about retiring for like 10 years, and he was buddies with the guy who owns the space next to him, knows him pretty well, owns the building.
Yeah.
Chuck.
Yeah.
And he was like, you should talk to him. And this was, over the last 5 years probably. And it was kind of off and on, like, let's do something. And then finally he was ready to retire. And it came at a decent time, but it's never really like a good time when it's that big of an investment. Cause like the roof was trash. Like you'd spent, hundreds of thousands of dollars just getting the structure to a point where you can start putting
like
finishes
back
to square zero, right. Yeah, so it was like we knew it was going to be expensive going in, and it was, but we also thought like, man, this is a really unique opportunity to have a space like this in downtown Valpo that a liquor license is part of the deal. So we didn't have to like lease one or buy one, which is really expensive. So yeah, I would say that was similar. Again, kind of forced, but like that's kind of in our blood to like force things, which I have to like suppress.
Yeah.
Like I find myself coming up with ideas all the time, like this would be awesome. We got to do this. And then it's like, no, we've got enough going on. Just
it's in your blood if you're doing that. If like for fun, your brain's like, hey, let's do new business ideas. Yeah.
That's when I tell myself, just go golf and like forget about it. Like, yeah.
Another thing I knew I needed to get better at, learned the hard way, was scheduling. It took me a long time. I figured out early on how long tasks roughly took me. Mm-hmm. It took much longer though to like actually figure out how those fit into my schedule and how to
like scheduling out keeping your client list organized and scheduling with them
and balancing my meeting schedule versus my workload schedule. Like I do all my own drafting still. And some of these take hours or days to get done. And so being able to schedule out, like if I give a client a 2-week deadline, like I'll send you your drawings in 2 weeks, being able to appropriately block out the time to get that stuff done and get something in the client's hands when I told them I was gonna, took a long time. I learned I need to schedule more like a plumber would, like they have crews or a framer. And they're like, we're going to be working on this house for 5 days, and then we're going to go to this house for 4 days. Then we're going to go to this. And that's what I need to do hour by hour.
Yeah, but even I've seen with that, when we have people working on our buildings, it's like they'll do that, and then they don't finish their work. And then they go on to the next project, and then they come back in 2 weeks, and it's, their schedules can still get jacked up.
Yeah, it can. And another thing that goes along with this is client communication. Like I've been really bad at it. So I brought on a buddy as a 1099. We call him like my director of sales, and we meet every single week, and then he'll send every single one of my clients a job update. And so everybody I'm working with every single week gets some email from usually Matt, saying, hey, here's where Adam's at. Oh, we got a meeting coming up this week. If you have any extra notes, make sure and send them over. It's scheduled for Wednesday. Just enough touch points so that if I am behind on that schedule, if there is something that's off, we're the ones to tell them and they're not the ones. That's when clients get the most mad. Like I'm sure you've had it where it's like, okay, you told me my roof was going to be done and it's not, I'm standing here, it's not done and no one has talked to me. Like I kind of feel the same way. If I'm the one that's like, hey, I told you drawings would be Monday, I'm running a little behind, it's probably looking like Wednesday, that's way better than waiting till Monday and waiting for them to email me. Like, hey, Adam, where are the drawings? Once I get the where are the drawing, I'm like, oh, I know I'm behind on that client. Like, if we're the first to communicate, I feel like I'm always ahead and always winning. And I'm always losing when the client's the first to communicate.
Is there anything you could do to increase productivity to like, I know you've got a lot of different things going on, but like, is there anything you can do to just make it go faster in an effort to get more clients or give better service? Or do you feel like you, and that's kind of what you're talking about, like better structure. Yeah. But like, is it just structuring it or is it too much workload at times or?
Yeah, it can be too much workload at times.
But you can't predict when someone wants to design a house, so it's like you kind of take it as it comes.
The thing that gets me in trouble the most is usually I'm pretty good of like, I know I have 40 hours or less of drawing to do this week. And if I pass that check, I'm like, okay, I'm good. I have 40 working hours. I can get those drawings done. Where I get in trouble is I didn't cross-check that with my current calendar. And I'll have a big mega meeting with a builder on Wednesday morning that takes 4 hours. And then I'll have 3 other client meetings. And the client meeting is scheduled for an hour, but it actually takes 2 hours of your time because the 30 minutes before you're kind of distracted and not really getting anything done. And 30 minutes after, kind of same thing. And so the meetings all bog up and backlog. And I don't do a good job of, okay, I've lost 8 hours in my week. I had 40 hours of drawing and now I've lost 8 hours. Like that needs to be made up somewhere, you know. And usually it gets made up Saturday morning if I'm really running behind. But yeah, that's the biggest backlog for me.
How does that happen more often than not, where you feel like you're like running behind consistently, or is it just at certain times throughout the year, like, oh, this was a busy season?
Yeah, it's more of a certain time thing. I would say I would hope that most of my clients, when they're done with the process, think, and I know not everybody is there. There's a couple of clients that stick out in my head where they would not agree with this. But I think most of my clients would say, Adam got us the drawings at or near when he said he would. You know, so that's my hope and my goal. And I think I'm getting close. I'm not an A+ at it, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last thing I have on my list is understanding, you know, when it comes to like the investment, the amount of like money you're putting in, and then the amount of repairs that happen on kitchen equipment. Like,
oh dang, yeah,
you don't want to run the business like where you pull everything out and then you just have enough like operating income to, you know, take care of the payroll and everything. Like I like having as much money in the business bank account as I can.
Yeah. Because
there are always surprises, and when you're doing a new project, you're factoring in a contingency, which might be like 13% or a little bit higher, because prices always change. As you know, this is your field, and so prices always go up, and there's change orders all the time. And because you figure stuff out, like, oh, actually the light should be like 5 feet that way. Like it's not falling under the table like it looked like it would on the plan.
Yeah.
So then, you know, so you have change, or like, it's just, the price is always good. It's never been like, we stayed on budget. You know?
You wouldn't believe your bill came in 30 grand under.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. No builder's ever said that.
Never. So I wish I would have had a better understanding of that, because that's got us not in trouble, but like it's pinched us a little bit at times, where it's like that we weren't expecting that amount in overages, to where now we've got to like be very careful with our spending right now.
Yeah.
Like if a manager would say, you know, at certain times, like, hey, we need a new piece of equipment, or if it's something they need to operate, that's one thing. And I would I would tap into a line of credit to make sure they had that. But if it's like kind of an extra, I'd be like, can we wait like a few months?
Yeah.
You know, so that, and then just, man, like sometimes you buy used kitchen equipment, or you just have stuff we've been open for, you know, 15 years now. So like some of that stuff is really old, and most of it's been replaced by now, but it's super expensive. It's not cheap. So, and we bought this combi oven at Birdie's. I bought it at an auction from Strongbows, and the thing, I mean, if it worked, it would be awesome. And it's like a $80,000 oven that I got for, you know, pretty cheap. And we've had Rationale come out to service it like 3 or 4 times already, and you know, you've got thousands of dollars into it, and it hasn't even like been operating. You know, we've used it like a few days at a time. Like, oh, now it's leaking here because it's steam, it's gas, it's like this all-in-one oven. It's awesome if it works. So just, you know, kitchen equipment is expensive. There's always thermostats going out and regulators and all that. So just kind of going into it knowing, like anticipating, not only coaching your managers, like take care of this stuff, like clean the condensers on every cooler and freezer in the building. But, you know, do what you can to maintain the flue of the back oven. Like, don't let a buildup of grease pile up there, and then the thing's going to go out, and then it's going to be, you know, $3,000 to fix.
Yeah.
So.
I would say even if you're not doing a construction process, like I've felt some of that where a computer goes out. Like, it's really nice to have a laptop that also, like, I've got a desktop and a laptop, and, you know, if something goes down, I'm not like 3 days without working, where I'm waiting for a part to come in or something. So yeah, I think, and like insurance and accounting and taxes and software, like there's always little stuff that comes up where you're like, oh, it's that much?
Yeah.
Oh, shoot.
Naturally,
like
I would say
plan.
like in terms of keeping the bank account in a strong position, that's something that I feel like I could have said I wish I knew if we were not good at that. Like I could see a lot of small business owners getting into that. We're like, we're killing it. Like, let's pull all this money out and go to Disneyland.
Yeah.
You know, so, but just from my dad's previous experiences and the way he's coached me, it's like, we don't do that. We keep majority of the profits in the business. You know, we take what we need to live on, but like we keep the business. This is the business money. It's not our money, you know?
Yeah.
So, so I could see a lot of entrepreneurs getting into small business ownership, having stars in their eyes when they have a couple profitable months, and then not leaving enough money in the bank account when things don't go well, because it inevitably will at some point. So having that, you know, having that mentality right out the gate is very important. Like, keep as much money in there as you can, and just wait for things to shake out. Because like in the restaurant industry, you have 3 months where it's the honeymoon period and you're busy all the time, and you're like, is this how it's always going to be? This is great, you know? And then it drops off, and it kind of, you know, and then it slowly, hopefully picks back up if you're doing a good job. So you just, you know, don't assume anything is like, you know, for sure and like a sure thing. You know, it's always changing.
100%. If you have anything that if you're a business owner, you started something and you have something you learned the hard way, drop it in the comments. If there's questions you have for us, also throw them in the comments.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's it for this week.
Yeah.
Thanks so
for
much for watching,
guys. Yep.
Have
Subscribe.
a good one. Yes, subscribe.